Bing. Hello everyone, welcome to my stream. My name is Bruce Rain from Brankus Creations, and for anyone who was watching yesterday, this is the part 2 of the work that I started yesterday on a Macintosh SE 30. As usual, if you are having any problems hearing me or seeing me, please let me know. Hello to everyone. Who have we got here? We've got Steve, we've got Dana, we've got Oz Retro Comp, we've got Charlie Hartwell, Dana Sibera, Trina is here, Alex, I think I got everyone. If I missed anyone, please let me know. I see, hang on, I see a House of Moth up the beginning there. Did he just go into the chat and then leave again, as he does sometimes, or is he actually here? So, good sound vid right off the bat. Good. Excellent. That's good to hear. So, so the story so far, I had a Macintosh SE 30 sent to me for recapping and repair if it needed it. And my video seems a little bit kind of laggy, doesn't it? Anyhow. So, yeah, it is like that. Yeah, she never said my name on Romper Room. Okay, so this particular SE30 was suffering from the old horizontal line CMA type situation, and it didn't take long to figure out why. Once we started looking under the microscope, we could see all sorts of nastiness and corrosion and broken traces and all sorts of stuff. So I went through and repaired some traces yesterday, and now I've given the board a clean, and then I've also coated it with UV solder mask. Now, why didn't I stream that? Well, first of all, because cleaning is just spending time in the ultrasonic cleaner, which is pretty dull to watch. And then I have to rinse it and dry it, and that's also pretty dull to watch while it sits in a little toaster oven, you know, sort of drying out. And then, of course, the UV solder mask gets painted on, and then we have to wait for that to dry as well. I'm just going to jump across to the microscope now, and we'll have a little look-see. This is, these are a couple of the trace repairs that I did, and you can see that this UV solder mask is now on it and is quite solid, so that's well protected. And it does two things. Obviously it provides insulation, but it also provides just some protection so that they can't get bumped. And then over here is where all the fun and games happened, and this is where we replaced, or we repaired the trace of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, hopeful that this is going to fix it all. GT, hello, welcome to the stream. And so, yeah, we are basically we're hopefully going to, you know, put some new caps on this and fire it up, and it'll be okay. So this won't be a long stream. Can't be a long stream. Got way too much to do. So I will put the caps on. And then we're going to fire it up and just see how it goes. Now, you might notice that my lovely shiny pads are not lovely and shiny anymore, and that's because I'm using a slightly different ultrasonic cleaning fluid at the moment, and it's doing this, and I'm not happy with it. And I am going to change back to the ultrasonic cleaning fluid I was using before, but in the meantime, I'm probably just going to go through, and I just want to test and see if these are still going to take solder well, or whether I need to go in and re-tin them. So, a prepared person would have all of the caps ready to go. I, however, didn't have the caps ready to go. Right. So, there's my little stash of caps here. Keep them all in little containers here. And of course, I have my cheat sheet as usual, my SE30 cheat sheet with all of the capacitor locations and ratings and all that sort of stuff. And of course, another thing we have to do is we have to put our little power connector back on, our little Molex style plug connector thingy, because I took that off so that I could have a look at the traces underneath it. Okay, well, thank you, GT, for joining me for whatever length of time you are able. Right, so let's start off. I'm just going to grab, I'll just grab 16 actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to stick on the 1 microfarad 50 volt. A lot of these old Macs have one single 1 microfarad 50 volt capacitor on them, and this is one of them. So I always keep a stash of them, but I don't keep as many of them as the others because even the computers that do have them only have one of them. So that one is up here. This is the little guy up there. So I'm just going to put some flux on that there. Now this is going to be a little bit challenging because I can't get this cap flush onto the surface because it we've got all this UV solder mask floating around, but I will still be able to make good contact. I don't see any issue with that. Tantalum capacitor replacing an electrolytic. We don't have a whole lot of room here because it's slightly larger than the original capacitor, but we still should have enough room. And the stripe on tantalum capacitors is on the positive side. Obviously, when we're dealing with, not obviously, but when we're dealing with electrolytic capacitors, the stripe is on the negative side. But some groovy person decided to change it up for the tantalum. So that's just to make us all feel stupid when we get it round the wrong way. Okay, so as usual, I've got a whole stack of flux on there. I've got some solder on the end of my soldering iron tip. And I'm just going to put that on there, and that pad looked like it took the solder without any issue at all. That's on there well. I'm just going to give it a push, make sure it's flush. Now these joints, as I said before, they're probably not going to end up being the nicest joints because this capacitor is not actually flush with the board. It's floating on top of that, what do you call that stuff, that solder mask. Okay, so let's now get a little bit more solder or solder, depending on which part of the world you are from. From my perspective, I don't mind how you say it. We all know that we're talking about the same thing. That's the important thing. Okay, well that's on. So that's encouraging. That even though those the solder looked a little bit rough on those pads after the cleaning, they still seem to be taking solder without any issue at all. So then let's continue. We've got, oops, I just banged the microphone there. I do apologise. All the rest are 16 microfarad, 47 microfarad, 16 volt. Very, very common capacitor rating on the old Macs. So if you're going to be working on these old Macs, I think someone's doing their lawn. If you're going to be working on these old Macs, keep a good supply of 47 microfarad, 16 volt. In this instance, I need to bang the microphone yet again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10. Oh, people having internet connection problems. Okay, so, yep, let's bring some of these out. Actually, I won't bring out too many because anyone who's watched my streams before knows that when I pull out too many of these capacitors in one go, while I'm working on the microscope, under the microscope, capacitor fairies come in and steal the ones that I got out and left on the desk. And then I go looking for them and I can't find them. And it's all very embarrassing. I've never been able to catch those capacitor fairies with the camera, but I know they're there, stealing my capacitors. So, of course, the big hope with this is that when we do all this, we are going to have a working SE30. And as I said in my stream yesterday, I give it about a 50-50. Having worked with so many of these SE30s, they are very, very finicky. They're very touchy, and I mean, I suppose that's fair enough. I mean, if you've got a broken trace or something like that, I can understand why it wouldn't work. But they just, because of the capacitor leakage, these capacitors are spread all over the board. You know, there's just a greater chance of there being damage all over the place. Okay. Capacitor fairies left them under my desk. Oh, well, that's nice. At least you found them. That's the main thing. I never seem to find mine again. I could, of course, just blame old age, but no, that's not the way I do things. Let's blame the capacitor fairies. Okay, so just checking this out here. Just having a look to see. I'm just going to set this one a little bit low so that it's not going to come in contact with any of these other traces around, because as you can see they're a little bit exposed here. You can see solder's actually sticking to that trace, so whoop. So I don't want any of this capacitor pin to be touching that. Let's try that again. Oh geez, see the way it keeps moving, and that is basically because the surface is not flat. So these are going to be a little bit wonky, and I don't like capacitors wonky on the boards that I repair, but at the same time, if it works, this particular recap is not exactly your standard normal recapping. It's I don't normally have to repair quite so many traces as I did this time. As you can see, this one's lifted right off the board. Okay. All right, as you can see that I'm just doing one side of each one as I go, and then I'll flip the board around and do the other side, and that's basically because I am right-handed. I hold my soldering iron in the right hand. It's very difficult for me to solder the other side of that without spinning the board around, and rather than having to spin the board around like sort of 5 times, I just do all one side and then spin it around and do the other side. It's all very logical. I'm using quite a lot more solder than I would normally on these joints. You can see they're quite fat joints, but as I say, that's all just part of the fact that we're dealing with all these, you know, sort of bumps and ridges and stuff on the board. And be as bad as my LC3. Oh, come on, Steve. The most important thing with the LC3 is it works. That is the one that works, isn't it? I think. Thank you, GT. You've probably already gone now, but thank you. South Bucks Underpants Gnomes. Yes. Yes, there is definitely a reference to the Underpants Gnomes in my Capacitor Fairy statement. Being a bit of a South Park fan. Having said that, I haven't watched an episode in a really long time. Okay, this is really ugly. I mean, this is really ugly. I mean, I hope someone doesn't look at this and say, "Oh, God, look at the recapping this guy does. What a mess." This is an exception. This is I would normally never let any sort of recapping go out looking like this, with, you know, great big huge soldery blobs at the end of each capacitor. I'm really troubled by this one. Okay, I'm just going to spin this around again. Right, there we go. I just got that one a little bit straighter. It was just a little bit too crooked, even for this board. Right, so that's now 3 of the 47 microfarad 16. Let's now pull out. I'll grab another 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, for anyone who is watching today who didn't get to see yesterday's stream, the old SE30 is renowned for its capacitor leakage, and of course it causes all sorts of problems because it has capacitors right next to really important components like all of the video components, and ISP basically cut out for about 10 minutes. That's a first. Maybe it's me. Maybe it doesn't like my stream. I mean, I wouldn't put it past it. So don't worry, Dana. We were just killing time till you got back. Okay, so I'm gonna stuck. Okay, let's get all. Oh no! Well, that time it wasn't the capacitor fairies. That time it was me. It's on the floor. Now, if I can't just find it, like straight up, I'm just going to grab another one and look for it later. Bang, gone. Gone. Okay, so as I mentioned, the SE30 leaky electrolytic capacitor, so I'm replacing them with tantalum capacitors that do not leak. For those who are unfamiliar with tantalum capacitors, they are called that because of the mineral inside them, which is tantalum. It's quite an expensive and rare mineral. This is why sometimes tantalum capacitors can be quite expensive if they're having trouble mining it. And what else can I tell you about tantalum capacitors? They are, when used within spec, incredibly reliable. And this is one of the reasons why when you grab some of these old Macs, and you've got all these leaky electrolytic capacitors, and all the tantalums that they put on there are perfectly fine. So, and of course, when you talk about the computers that all need recapping, when you look at, say, for example, the Quadra 700, which has no electrolytic capacitors on it, it has only tantalum, and it doesn't suffer from capacitor leakage on the logic board. Still just as good as they were when they were made, with a couple of exceptions. One, dodgy power supplies, and two, leaky batteries. But we can't blame that on the electrolytic capacitors, can we? Right. What's the stream? Okay, thank you, Trina. That's dedication, Trina, for actually going back and watching it from the point you fell asleep. I have to say that I appreciate that. I don't want you to think that that's unappreciated, because that was a long stream yesterday. It was like 3 hours or something, just shy of 3 hours. I don't normally stream for that long. Okay. So these ones aren't as bad. Oh god, that's not even in camera. These ones aren't as bad as the other ones because they don't have quite as much UV solder mask under them. They don't have that big build up from those trace repairs. So that's one side of each. Now let's do the other side. And I will do my best to try and keep what I'm doing in camera. As I've mentioned in some of my other streams, what I see through my eyepiece of my microscope is actually a much larger area than you can see captured on camera, because I have I look through a great big circle, whereas obviously what I'm broadcasting here is a rectangle. So I've got all that space. And so I just I just have to try and be aware of what I'm seeing versus what's being broadcast. So there we go. Right, so that's those three. Okay, stream quality is really crappy at the moment. I blame the Chinese. Oh, well, may as well. I mean, right. Are tantalums heat sensitive when soldering like glass diodes? They're not. These yellow ones, orange ones, if you hit them with a hot air gun, they do tend to go brown, but it doesn't seem to affect the efficiency of tantalum. Interesting point of note about tantalum. Tantalum has one of the highest melting points of any metal that we know of. I think like tungsten might be like the highest, I think, from memory. And yeah, tantalum, it's 1,500 degrees Celsius or something like that. So tantalum itself is not going to have any problems with heat. As to whether the package that is holding it, the rest of the actual capacitor, that's another story. But yeah, I mean, the tantalum capacitors really don't seem to be heat sensitive. So, right. I need more caps. I've got, I think, 1, 2, 3 more to put on here, and then we've just got the axials, and then I'll put a little connector on, and then we'll be ready to test. So this is getting close to being finished. Obviously, when you've had the other video doing all the cleaning and everything like that, the actual recapping part is quite quick. Let's plunk this one on. It's funny. I when I do some of these recaps, I get so on autopilot that I look back and I think, oh, did I get the polarity right with that one? Because I just wasn't paying any attention to what I was doing. I was just plonking it on, and thankfully, most of the time, I do get it right. But I do always check. Every time I do a recap, I always go back, check to make sure that the right cap is in the right place, and the polarity is right, all that sort of stuff. And flippy. Let's see if I can do this one at this angle. There we go. And then that one didn't need any mask on it at all, because it was that one it had very little leakage whatsoever, so there was very little damage to the traces around it. These SE30, the mask on the SE30 traces is really thin. I don't know if it's a cost-cutting measure or a manufacturing issue or whatever the case is, but it is really, really thin. So it just takes virtually nothing to scrape that mask off. And putting the cap on, and then just be left with exposed copper. Now I'm sort of here in a sea of plastic, so I mentioned that yesterday. There's plastic all around here, so I'm going to come at this at a slightly different angle, I think. These capacitors that I'm using here are Chemet brand. I have used what was it, AVX in the past, but these ones are Chemet. The reason why I changed from AVX to Chemet was that I had trouble getting the AVX for whatever reason, some sort of supply issue, and so I then just sort of started. I ordered the Chemet, and then with the supplier that I use for capacitors, I put I created like a kind of like a product list thing where you can do for reordering, and I just added the Chemets, and so I've just been buying Chemets ever since. Okay, prep work is always the longest part, but also the most important, much of the time at least. Hello Ben H. This is very, very true. You know, and it's one of the reasons sort of sometimes I get people contacting me. Sometimes people just send me messages out of the blue, and they sort of say, "Oh, look, yeah, I'm having trouble getting solder to stick to what I'm working with." And I always say to them, "Look, there are three things when it comes to solder sticking. Number one is that the surfaces of both things you're trying to solder are clean. Second is that you're getting enough heat in your soldering iron, and the third is that you have plenty of flux." Those are the main things. So if you, you know, when I see people that are just sort of like, "Oh, the solder won't stick," and they're just adding more and more and more and ending up with these great big blobs that aren't actually sticking to anything, you know that one of those things is not right. You know that they've either not cleaned what they're soldering, they don't have enough heat in their soldering iron, or there's not enough flux. And yes, there is flux in the solder that we use, but that is only effective at the point that that solder melts. The moment that solder melts, that flux burns away and it can't be used anymore. So if I put some solder onto the tip of my iron, all that flux is gone. So that is now fluxless solder on the tip of my iron. And that's why I have flux on the board when I do this stuff. Mention that. Hey ho, Kim at the capacitor here. Always been very interested with the way that Kermit the Frog used to say. Kermit the Frog used to say hi ho, and was he just like saying hello to the hookers around him? I don't know. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, I think that's it for the. Oh no, missed one. Let me just check. Yep, just one. Welcome back, Steve. So yeah, like Dana's been having internet problems. You're having internet problems. I mean, if you don't want to watch my stream, you can just tell me. So, Steve, you thinking of streaming after I've finished? Huh? Huh? For those who are not aware of Steve or Mac84, jump on, have a look at his channel. It's all based around vintage Mac stuff and that. Some great content there. Jump on and subscribe. And he is seriously thinking about, and I will say we are providing a fair bit of peer pressure. He is seriously thinking about streaming recapping of a Quadra 840, which I personally would very much like to see. It is a problematic 840. We've seen streams on this particular computer before. Yes, that is quite correct. Wasn't this board missing a cap when you first got it? And yes is the answer to that. Oh, wow. God, I missed a few. Wow, okay. Oh, jeez, the chat's going fast now. Who's greeting the garden implements? Sesame Street was set in the inner city. Yeah, fair enough. Good evening. The stream seems to be stuttering, does it? Is anyone else getting stuttering? There might be an opportunity to maybe refresh the old YouTube. My picture in here I know is a little bit jerky. I think that's because of the settings of the webcam. But, you know, it's the microscope's probably the important thing. Is anyone else getting stuttering? Please let me know. And what else have we got? Okay. Oh, Steve's saying yes, he thinks he shall stream afterwards, so that's fantastic. So everyone, please jump on afterwards. Board missing a cat. Yes, yeah, stream's good. Here, stream. Okay, other people have got saying stream is okay, so I would recommend maybe doing a bit of a refresh. Steve did say he would stream after this. Hello, Jay. How you doing? Damn, I thought the stream was starting now. Sorry, yeah, there was a little bit of a stuff up with the time, but don't worry, not that much has happened. If I can just make quick mention of the House of Moth, you'll see his name up there. That's Jay. I didn't mention him yesterday. Please jump on and subscribe to his channel. He has got some awesome content there. Just wanted to give him a bit of a plug because I didn't do that yesterday and I meant to. Buffering quite a bit, still folding. No, I shouldn't be folding. Mine's saying 0 drop frames. I'm definitely not. Yeah, it's actually saying that the excellent connection. It's saying excellent connection and no drop frames. So, and I'm definitely not folding. My CPU is only at 44%. So, crystal clear streaming all the way to the USA. Working here, but drops down to 480p from time to time. Manually selecting 1080 brings it back. Weird. My OS is stuttering because maybe the internet's breaking down. I think my SP has recovered, so I presume that's mine. There's a lot of chat here about internet connections, so I'm just working my way through it. Turn on 360p. I'll squint, probably my end. It only froze around the start for me and it's been fine since. Okay. Maybe I want to catch up with the half hour I missed. Yep, no worries, Jay. I do apologise. It isn't particularly interesting, but I appreciate your being so conscientious. All right, let's continue with this. We have one more capacitor to go. Oh, actually, we've got half a capacitor to go. Jeez, that's a lot of solder. I might get rid of some of that. All right, it's still a lot of solder. I might just grab a little bit of wick because, you know, I mean, as I said with this one, I'm going fairly heavy on the solder for a reason, but it's no reason to go that far, especially on this one. There we go. That looks much neater, light and tidy. Some pipe along internet is being stupid, I guess. Yeah, I guess it must be. Yes, I mean, this is the other thing. Obviously, a lot of people are working from home, so I think that's impacting on streams. But there's a common connection that might explain it. Okay, yeah, maybe. Well, I do apologise. I mean, there's very little I can do about it from my end because, as far as I can see, connection's going quite well. Now, the next thing I need to do is put a couple of axial capacitors on. If anyone is saying, hey, what the goodness sake is an axial capacitor? Let me just move this. Bit precarious, isn't it? See all my CPU daughter cards? This isn't an ideal system. I have a significant shortage of bench space in here. Well, I don't really. I've got heaps of bench space, but it's got heaps of stuff to stick on it. So I've always got this situation where things are just piling on top of things or piling on top of things. So, axial capacitors. These are electrolytic capacitors, and what makes them axial is the fact that the lead comes out of both ends, like that, rather than two leads in one end, which would be referred to as a through-hole, a radial through-hole capacitor. So, where did I take this from? 470/25. There. Now, let's have a look-see, shall we? I need a 470 16 and a 220 16. Now, what I tend to do is with these ones, I tend to go up one step in voltage. So rather than putting a 16 volt on, I'm going to put 25 volt on. Just means that there's less load on the capacitor. Having said that, these axial capacitors rarely, if ever, fail on these computers. 470/25. There we go. Right. So I'm going to put that now. Where am I going to put that now? That'll do. Nice and precarious. Balanced on top of a graphics card that's balanced on top of my computer. There we go. What is an axial capacitor? I think I just answered that. It's probably just the fact that there's a bit of a lag and everything. So hopefully I have answered all of the questions about what an axial capacitor is. Should you still have questions, please feel free to ask. I know, I can't believe what that cleaner did to my shiny pads either. I am so miffed about it. So this is the backstory. I basically use an ultrasonic cleaner product called Electro, made by a company called Cleantech here in Australia. Not a plug for them. They basically make ultrasonic equipment, and they also make ultrasonic cleaning fluids. And this is specifically designed for removing grime and grease and flux residue removal and degreaser. So, and I buy this from this place in Queensland in a 5-litre bottle. It's a concentrate. It lasts me ages. Anyhow, I noticed the other day I was getting really low on it. And the problem is that when I order this from Queensland, it takes forever to arrive. Queensland is the state north of me. It's a fair hike. And I just think they're not geared up very well for that sort of online ordering. So you order it. I mean, I ordered some like last week, and they still haven't even dispatched it, which is just kind of pissing me off. But that could be the whole COVID thing. So, anyhow, I was running really low on this stuff, so I need to get some more stuff. And I thought it'd be nice if I could find some stuff locally. And the place that I buy all of my components from, which is just very near to me here, they're only, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 Ks away from here. I bought this stuff from them, Ambersil ultrasonic cleaning liquid. Now, I didn't just buy it out of the blue. I actually asked Paul Daniels. For those who don't know Paul Daniels, he does all the MacBook repairs. I asked him what cleaner he uses, and he said Ambersil. I was like, okay, well, that's a good enough recommendation for me. The price is pretty good. It's easy for me to get. I get it literally next day delivery. So order it, I get it the next day. Fantastic. So anyhow, I've set it all up in the ultrasonic cleaner, and I'm just finding that it is, although it is cleaning the board, no doubt about that, it was making my nice fresh solder joints look kind of, dark. And so I'm doing some experimentation. I'm trying to dilute it a little bit more and just see. But what I would really like is to just get my original stuff back again. But as I say, I've ordered this stuff and I'm just waiting for it to arrive. So there we go. There's an interesting story about ultrasonic cleaning liquids. Where are we up to? All caught up. Jeez, you skimmed that well, didn't you, Joe? So, hot lead. Okay. Okay, where are we? Love actual caps. There we go. 240 still. The light keeps freezing. I don't know what the issue is. I mean, everything here is telling me that it's all going well. You might have to just catch it on the replay. I know it's not as fun, but you know. Okay. Well spotted, Dana. That's Londo's hair, Dana, not the other Dana. It's being held up by capacitor fairies. Right. Right. Now let's continue with this because I am really losing my way, aren't I? Okay. So I get my axial capacitor. I'm going to bend these pins down. I like to try and keep them as neat as possible. Oops, not like that. So I like to start with the wire nice and straight, and then I get a rough idea of the space that's going on, and then look at where I want to bend the pins. And as I've mentioned before, what I always like to do is I always like to place the capacitor on the board so that you can easily read the ratings and whatnot. Because anyone out there who's ever put together a recapping guide or trying to put together a guide of a like sort of like a what would you call inventory of capacitors on a particular device or or computer or whatever. When you can't read what's on each capacitor and you have to take it out to read it, that is just really frustrating. So I like to be kind to the next person. There we go. That goes in there. That goes in there. I probably should have this on this little side angle, because then you can at least see the board. I know this is a rubbish camera, but it will get better. I am waiting for products to arrive that will allow me to broadcast a much better picture from the side here. That is the plan anyway. I'll be able to zoom right in, and it's going to be awesome. Okay. For those who were watching yesterday, when I removed these axial capacitors, I did it with my new solder suckery tool. So these are with axial capacitors. They've got a stripe on them pointing to the electrolytic, so they've got a stripe on them pointing to negative. So I put the negative to the opposite side to where the little plus is indicated on the board. Oh, is Dana Siberia the one that does those little combo Mac kind of mesh of Mac things? Those Photoshop images. Yeah, I love those. They're great. Okie dokie. Right, so we are soldering an axial capacitor onto the board. I bend the pins a little bit so that the capacitor doesn't fall out. And we get some solder on here, a bit of heat and some solder. Now, I mentioned before about the way that the flux works just when you're melting it. And that's a classic example of there when I was actually soldering, attaching the solder to this pin. The flux, which is inside, it's the little core of flux in the middle of the solder. It sort of melts. It does its job as I'm melting this solder onto this wire. And that's why I don't need any additional flux when I'm doing through-hole components, because I can actually hold the soldering iron in one hand, the solder in the other, melt them on there, and then the flux is actually fluxing as I put it on. And if there's anyone watching that's like, what is flux for? Jump onto my channel. There is a video called Learning to Solder or something like that. I go into great detail about what flux does and how it works and how it makes our lives better. All stuff from my Dick Smith kits in the 80s. Yes, I did that too. Good old Tricky Dicky. These days here in Australia, if you're wanting kits, you go to JCar. They're doing the same thing ultimately that Dick Smith did. The only difference is they're doing it in a way that doesn't send them broke. Okay, so we've got another capacitor, and I am just absolutely totally misjudging the bending of these pins to fit in. Oh my god. Okay, so right, where are we? Jeff Barnard, hello. I better catch up on this. That was one of the laser built in. Check on stuff in there. Yeah, Laserdisc is an interesting thing because we never got Laserdisc out here in Australia. I don't think so. It was never sold as a retailer. People might have imported some, but so you know, there is just nothing Laserdisc out here. You know, if you were trying to buy some or something like that. So I'm re-straightening these pins because I bent them in the altogether wrong place, and I just didn't like the look of it. That's just how I am, man. Okay, so. Okay. Okay. Right. We are getting there. We are getting there. I did think I would be finished by now, but as usual, when I stream and I just start chatting and talking nonsense, and I'm still way off with these, but it's better than it was before. No. Nope. I'm going to put that one on one side and grab another one from my little teetering pile here. And I'll straighten that pin out later on with some better tools, but I'm going to start off with another one here. I owe it to my customers. Right. So, let's see if I can't get this right first time. Much better. Thank you for only taking 3 goes at it. Oh, okay. Place in Chinatown that sold them. My desk has a Mac 128K complete with modem, telephone, and image I need to clean off. Did you finish that video, Steve? I mean, are you taking those off prematurely? Right. Microscope. Blurry microscope. Oopsie. I really need to just do this. I'll just get these texts. Oops. Wow. Ignore. And then I'm just going to turn do not disturb. There we go. Because there's a little bit of chatter, message chatter going on there, and I don't want to distract me any more than it needs to. Okay, this is number 2 for the axial. Right, so there's another axial cap on, and then we'll just snip it. Snip it. So I've just been informed that YouTube is not doing a very good job with this today. We can blame YouTube. I'll be really interested to see how this turns out on the replay. Because as I say, everything is looking absolutely peachy from my perspective. There's nothing wrong with the settings. So I do apologise for the technical issues that I have absolutely no control over. But anyhow, we're drawing to a close now. We're actually getting there. So the last thing I need to do now, so let's just have a quick look at the board, where it stands at the moment. So we have a whole series of replaced capacitors here. We've got tantalum instead of electrolytic. The trace repairs are around this region here and around this region here. They've been done there, so we've got all those capacitors replaced. We've got these axial capacitors that have now been replaced. As I've said before, they often don't need to be replaced, but I replace them anyway. I now have to replace this that I removed. Now that would be a nice easy job, I would imagine. So this is just going to be a matter of side angle. God, this is a crap camera, this one. Light. Okay, so I just need to put this in. There's a little notch here to show where the notch of this plug goes, so that's nice and easy to put in. There's also a little mark for a curved edge here, but this doesn't have that, so that's pointless. So we're just going to pop that in there. That holds in place quite well. There's enough sort of friction to hold that in place, so I don't need to bend anything. And then I'm just going to pop him over the other side and start soldering. And where are we? There we are. And this is going to use a whole stack of solder because they're great big holes with great big pins. This is really annoying me. I've got one of these humongous spools of solder and it's jamming up. It's jamming up. There we go. That's better. That's better. Right, there we go. Let's begin. Will I be doing a live stream showing it working? Well, once I finish this, that's the next step. I'm going to put it back together and I am going to fire it up. And, phew, as I said, 50-50. If you're wondering why when the camera moves to the side it moves a little bit jerky, that's because I move the microscope with my nose, my proboscis. It's called a proboscis pan, like that. This is just good old repetition. There we go. Okay, so where are we? I need to reshoot the intro, but almost done. Drop down in quality here for 25 minutes, perhaps. It's all fine here. Bruce, must be a Murica problem. Yeah, it must be. Okay, we were doing the live stream. I saw that. I had a question about parts and soldering on the last stream. It was on, and I remember it felt really important. About 46 minutes into this one, I just remembered that I'd forgotten what it was. Okay. Well, I'm here if you remember. Kate! Right. Okay. So, we have now reattached our connector. So, what we have here, in theory, is a board ready to go. It will be... I'm just going to go and have a quick check here to make sure that everything is soldered on and where it should be. I always like to do that because I make mistakes. Make no mistake, I make mistakes. I try to correct them. Okay, so looking good. Looking good. I think we're all good. So it's time to test it out. And as I said before, I am not super confident, and that's only because there was just so much damage. But let's give it a whirl. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. There we go. It's just banging the microphone there, but I just need enough desk space here to put an SE30 case. Yeah. Okay, let's move these boards out of the way. Perch them precariously up there. These are heavy. You can go somewhere there. Sit on top of a 610. All right. Open this SE30. Has been opened before. This is nice and easy to open. Sorry about the camera wobble. Let me just change it to the side angle for a moment. Can I lift him up a smidge? It's a metric smidge. And I'm going to just see if I can grab something. Yeah. This'll do. No, can't find something. Oh, never mind. I would have liked to have just popped something down onto the bench to rest this on, but the bench is quite soft and forgiving, so fine. Off comes the back. And off comes the little, what do you call this thing? Shield. And here's my little system of little baggie with all the stuff this came with. And I should put this in the baggie because this came with it as well. And here is my ROM sim. Now, as I mentioned earlier on in the other stream, this ROM sim is quite different to the ones that I've seen in other SE30s. It's not to say that it's wrong or bad or anything, but it is just different. It does say Apple Computer on it, so then this one had 5 megs of RAM in it, I think, which is, of course, a travesty with an SE30. So we had 4 256K sims that were in there, and we had 4, well, I assume these are ones. I didn't even bother to check, but I'm pretty sure it's 4 ones and 4 256s, which gave us a total of 8 megs of RAM. So I'm going to whip those out. I'm not going to bother sticking RAM in all the slots because I don't need to do that. All I need is enough to test it. So there's my little Ziploc baggie. And then I've got my board up here. I put up there. Ta-da. Right. Perhaps a question for the Discord. PowerBook 500 memory expansions looked to have the same board with different chip quantities. Could components from many small ones be combined? Yeah, I don't know. Sorry. I don't know the answer to that one, I'm afraid. But I'm sure the Hive Mind will help. You might that might be a question even for Mac84 Steve. He might know the answer to that one. Right. Okay. So I've got to put this RAM in. Now, one of the things that really sucks about the RAM slots on these SE30s are the fact that they are held in with these little plastic clips, and they do have a tendency to break. And it's the worst feeling in the world when they do. You can get around it. If it's only being held on one side, it's usually fine. And if you do break it on both sides, you can usually use a little bit of hot glue to just hold it in place. The great thing about hot glue is you can just sort of snap it off if you ever want to take the RAM out. It's not ideal, I know, but, you know, I mean, this is just how it is with these stupid plastic RAM sim holders. I mean, I don't know if someone makes new ones of these, but it'd be great if they did. I've never seen any around. Now our ROM sim goes in. We're getting towards the pointy end here, folks, so strap yourselves in. All right, we've got... I should spin this around, but I'm going to do this carefully. Oh. So this has no hard drive in it, so the best we can hope for is a flashing question mark. But to be honest, if I get a chime and a flashing question mark, I'll be, you know, I might do a little dance. That's awesome. Right, so I'm going to connect up the speaker. Yep, and I'm going to, yes, I mean, I'm definitely getting the impression that there is some grand scale internet problem going on at the moment. So if people are having trouble seeing the vid, I think that's why. And it may just mean you have to watch this another day. So I'm going to connect up my power cable. At the moment, it's really easy to work inside this SE30 at the moment because there's no hard drive. So there's a lot more vacant space inside here. So it's great. Okay, so power connector is connected, speaker is connected, slot it into one side here, and then put these little gaps, make those gaps line up, and then slide it down. Nice and easy to put in place. There we go. I'm not going to bother connecting anything else up because it's just, pointless. There's a fair bit of dust in here. I'm not sure I'd go as far as to say it's caked, but there's a fair bit of dust in here. Well, this has been the moment that we've been leading up for. I do hope it doesn't go. Do I have a power cable here? I think I do. Is it plugged in? That's another question. We'll soon find out. I'm connecting 240 volts of AC power to this. This particular power supply, it is automatically able to switch between 110 or 240 volts. One of the things nice about these is if you've got one in Australia, it's the same as one in America. So, right. You ready? We all ready? Shouldn't get magic smoke with these ones because there's no reefer caps in these. The magic smoke is usually brought around by the reefer filter caps. So I'm a little bit nervous, I have to say. You may not hear the chime because the speaker's all the way over here, but let's just see. Assuming it chimes. That's a chime. That works. Well, there we go. That's pretty darn rewarding. We've got a flashing question mark. So we've got a chime, we've got sound, we've got a booting. Flashing question mark, I actually have a drive I can connect into it, but it's up in the house, so I can't be bothered to walk out there. So, yeah, it bonged. Well, that was, I think, not only rewarding for me, but I'm hoping it's rewarding for you guys, because boy, oh boy, that's a lot of time you've invested. And I thank you, the people who have watched, and have stuck through the whole thing and all that sort of stuff. It's I do appreciate it. But yeah, that's couldn't ask for a better outcome with the computer in that state, with that level of corrosion, with trace damage, to repair it and then get this. This is pretty rewarding. There we go. Just turn the brightness down. Obviously, we've got some geometry issues here. This is off one side, and it's the wrong size. If you're wanting to actually adjust its centering position, I'm probably going to do a video on that in the future. It's not the easiest or the safest thing to do because you actually have to get your hand down into the back of this yoke when it's on. And that's where it all starts to get really hairy and dangerous because we're dealing with some pretty nasty voltages here. So, but anyhow, I am planning to do a video on that at some stage. So, yep, and so there we go. I finished my defensive driving course. Now, there's an inside joke. All right, well, I'm going to switch him off, and then I will start to say my goodbyes. I just wanted to mention a couple of things before I finish up. That board is obviously going to need to be cleaned, so I won't put it all back together just yet. You may notice that I'm putting my hand in here after it's been switched on without discharging it, which is not something I would ever recommend doing. As with all of the stuff that I do, you have to be, the stuff that I do, I take no responsibility if you do this stuff and then you do yourself a mischief. Okay. Or damage your computer. That's another really important thing. Okay. So, put that up there. Put the, I'm just going to put these things here very quickly. I'm going fast. I'm going fast. No. People are probably, now that they've seen it bong, they're all probably just disappearing in droves. We've seen everything we came to see. Bye. I've got things to do. Right. So, just going to move this out of the way to very quickly just discuss a couple of things. Back to front camera. Bing. Okay, so again, thank you everyone for watching, and I do appreciate it. I just wanted to mention very quickly, Dana did mention this before. He saw it in the background with his eagle eye. This is going to be the subject of my next live stream video. What we have here is the Quadra 700, which is quite a popular old Mac. A lot of people like these. I think it was the first 68040, was it not? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. The first of the 68040s maybe came out at the same time as the 800, but anyhow. This is not a computer that typically needs recapping because it has, as I mentioned earlier on in the stream, this one has tantalum caps, not electrolytic caps. So that's a good thing. Now, what is a bad thing though is, let me bring this camera down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to take this power supply out here. So this power supply is slotted in that way, and there's a little piece of plastic here which is stopping it from going up. So you just got to pull that bit of plastic and then lift that up and up and up. Now, there's quite a bit of corrosion on here. It looks like this was stored at a beach or something. So I'll just get this out of the way. This is, I'm not doing a new stream or anything like that. I just wanted to do a quick little show and tell. I'm now going to take the hard drive assembly out. Whoops. Remove that screw. And these cables just need to come out. We've got a hard drive cable, we've got a power cable, and a floppy drive cable. And then we get this. There's a little plastic tab here. Pull it forward, and then this thing just should, have I missed something? Should just come out. There we go. So there we go. 160 megabyte hard drive in there, and a floppy drive, and have a look at this. Look at the color on that. Look at the sheen. And then let's have a look inside very quickly. As you can see, there's quite a bit of rust down here. My guess is this was stored in a cupboard like this, and under there is where the battery holder would have been. That battery has leaked, and there's a rather lot of corrosion now. I love that patina. It definitely has a patina. So it's my understanding this doesn't currently work. The next live stream is going to be about having a good old look at this and seeing if we can resurrect it. And I'd be very happy if we are able to, because Quadra 700s are getting a little bit rare these days and obscenely expensive. It'd be really nice if we could get this one up and running. So that is basically it for me today. As I said, this is not going to be as long as yesterday's stream. Mind you, I've still managed to go for a little while. Everyone keep in mind that Steve, Mac84, he is going to be streaming a little bit later on, playing with the Quadra 840, another one of my favourite Macs. I'll be live in a few minutes. Look at that. Guys, come on. Can't ask for more than that. Back-to-back entertainment. I'll just check over here. Let's move like magic. Yes. Was this thing stored in a pool house? Yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you? I mean, there's some rather horrendous corrosion here. And of course, this also highlights that amazing design flaw of the Quadra 700, the fact that the RAM sim slots were underneath the drive assembly, which means that there was very little clearance for the RAM. So when they started bringing out larger RAM sims that were tall, they couldn't be fit into this one. So that was a really stupid thing. But anyhow. I don't have a fancy Bruce recapping guide. There should be an 840AV recapping guide there on my website. There should be. I did add one. If it's not there, I'll have to double check. But yeah, there should be an 840AV recapping guide. So, you know, you can print that out and have a play or whatever. All right. That's it for me. So thank you everyone for joining, and thanks for sticking with it, and you know, getting to see the end with the thing actually firing up, which is a very rewarding thing. And I will see you at the next stream. So have fun, guys, and stay safe.